Hello and welcome to ENI UK and Europe Edition. I'm Giancarlo Matera reporting from London. We'll be bringing you news reports from the United Kingdom and Europe. On our program today, the Bank of England raises interest rates again as the Ukraine war fuels inflation. The UN says more than 3 million Ukrainians have fled their war-torn country. And joining us, our live correspondent this week is Ashley Espiritu. Thank you for joining us, Ashley. What will you be reporting for us today?
Hi, Giancarlo. Thank you. I'll be reporting on the takeaway food app Deliveroo and its rising annual losses and surge in their home deliveries. Back to you.
Thank you, Ashley. We'll look forward to that report later in the program. From EBC France, a report on how companies are helping consumers cope with the increasing cost of electricity and gas. And Julianne Aala reports on the Saharan dust storm which reaches Madrid, Spain. And our sports news this week. Troubled Chelsea ease past Lille into the Champions League quarter-finals. And Jurgen Klopp warns Liverpool that their title momentum is a fragile flower. Our view from our window this week comes from Lauterbrunnen and its magnificent Staubach Falls. The Bank of England on Thursday hiked its main interest rate to its pre-pandemic level to combat runaway inflation that risks soaring far higher as the Ukraine conflict fuels energy costs. The Bank of England hiked borrowing costs by a quarter point, its third increase in a row. The decision came one day after the US Federal Reserve carried out the first of what is expected to be a number of rate hikes this year to tackle decade-high inflations. The UK Central Bank said that the country's annual inflation rate could top 8% this year, as the Ukraine war fuels already sky-high prices for oil, gas, and other commodities. It had previously forecast inflation to peak at just 7.2% in April. The Bank of England even warned that should wholesale energy prices continue to soar, inflation could potentially be several percentages more higher than was prior estimated. 8 members of the bank's 9-strong Monetary Policy Committee, including its governor, voted to lift its key rate by a quarter point. Regarding inflation, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia has led to further large increases in energy and other commodity prices, including food prices. It is also likely to exacerbate global supply chain disruption and has increased the uncertainty around the economic outlook significantly. The latest official data showed that the UK's annual inflation hit 5.5% in January, the highest level since 1992. Inflation is rocketing around the world, also as economies reopen from the pandemic. The UK's February inflation data is due on Wednesday. This coincides with a budget update from the government, which is facing higher repayment costs on its vast pandemic bill following the rate hikes. The Finance Minister, Rishi Sunak, has already announced a major tax hike starting in April on the UK workers and businesses. That same month, a cap on domestic gas and electricity bills is set to significantly increase. While Britain's unemployment rate has fallen to its pre-pandemic level, wages are eroding at the faster pace in 8 years as prices soar. UK consumers now face rising borrowing costs that will compound by higher food and energy bills and tax rises to boot. He noted that while rate hikes will mean that savers get a bit more return on the cash held in their bank, elevated inflation means they will actually be worse off. The bank also confirmed Thursday it would stop the reinvestment of government bonds under its massive quantitative easing stimulus, which now stands at £867 billion or $1.1 trillion. Since the crisis in Ukraine began on February 24th, the UN, its refugee agency, has recorded over 3 million Ukrainians who have fled their country. With more than 3 million people having fled the country, the vast majority of them being women, children, and older people who left behind their homes and often families, not knowing what's to come, the agency said. And as the hostility between Ukraine and Russia continues to heighten, the number of refugees fleeing Ukraine continues to grow. The United Nations reported on Thursday that the number grew by more than 100,000 in 24 hours. According to the UN, more than 2 million people still within Ukraine borders have also fled their homes. In addition, the UN's International Organization for Migration said 162,000 third country nationals have also fled the country as of Wednesday. Ukrainian refugees have crossed the borders to their neighboring countries, Poland, Hungary, and Slovakia. And 6 in 10 Ukrainian refugees crossed the Polish border, or some 1.9 million people so far. The Polish border guards, however, have said that the incoming numbers were down 10% on Wednesday compared to Tuesday. Tens of thousands of people are also entering Ukraine from Poland, mostly those returning to fight, but also others seeking to care for elderly relatives or returning to bring their families out of Poland. A total of 282,000 Ukrainian refugees crossed into Hungary. Hungary has 5 border posts with Ukraine and several frontiers, including Zahony, where local authorities have turned public buildings into emergency centers for the refugees. Some 200,000 refugees made it across Ukraine's border into Slovakia. The vast majority is also thought to have made their way further into other countries in Europe. We estimate that the large number of people have moved onwards to other countries, the UN said. Also, according to the UN, 491,000 had made their way into neighboring Romania, including people who had crossed over from Moldova to reach an EU member state. It is also reported that 350,000 Ukrainians had crossed into the non-EU state of Moldova and its closest border to the major port city of Odessa. Many Ukrainians fleeing and fighting transit through Moldova, a small nation of 2.6 million en route to the westwards of Romania and other countries beyond. Moreover, some 168,000 refugees have sought shelter in Russia. In addition, the UN said that 50,000 people had crossed into Russia from pro-Russian Donetsk, the region of eastern Ukraine, between February 21 and 23. Likewise, some 2,000 refugees have been reported to make it to Belarus. The UN initially estimated that up to 4 million people could leave Ukraine, but last week admitted the figures might well be revised upwards. Hour by hour, minute by minute, people are fleeing the terrifying reality of violence in Ukraine. Unless the conflict ends, this heartbreaking crisis is set to grow. We need peace now, urges the refugee agency. It's time for a break now, but please come back for some more ENI UK and Europe edition.
Mr. Bawal, may ibis ka, oh.
Ba't
It's a prank!
Okay lang manakot. Pero kung mananakot ka para sa boto, bawal yan.
Ayon sa Omnibus Election Code, threats, intimidation, terrorism, use of fraudulent device or other forms of coercion is an election offense.
Sino kausap mo? Makaalis na nga, sa iba na lang ako mananakot.
Mr. Pwede! Mr. Pwede! May malaking ibis sa likod mo!
Nox! Babawi ka pa, ha? Di mo ako maiisahan!
Ako si Mr. Bawal na nagpapaalala sa inyo na ang pananakot para sa boto. Ibis! Uy! Bawal yan!
A public service message of Net25, Formata ng Halalan 2022. Matatag, matapang, matapat.
Bilisan nyo yung TV! Dali! Sakay na agad!
Akit bahay ka, no?
Sino ka?
Ako, si Captain Kutob!
Napakadali lang ng game na to. Naka-stockings kayo sa mukha, tapos hihipan nyo ang ping-pong ball papunta sa kabila. Hanggang sa makarating kayo sa dulo na yon.
Welcome to Mobile Legends!
Welcome back to Ina UK and Europe edition. I'm Giancarlo Matera. Now for some more interesting stories from around UK and Europe this week. The takeaway food specialist firm Deliveroo has reported widening losses as it warned the impact of increased costs. With us today is Ashley Espiritu. Hello, Ashley.
Thank you, Giancarlo. Yes, the international takeaway food app Deliveroo on Thursday announced rising annual losses after costs rose by more than 1/3, offsetting a surge in home deliveries. Loss after tax jumped 36% to £308.5 million last year compared with 2020. The British group said in a statement, adding the outlook was clouded by a strong inflation and the Ukraine war. Revenue surged 57% to £1.8 billion as consumers continued to order from home despite easing COVID curbs and controversy over treatment of its riders. French prosecutors at an ongoing trial in Paris are demanding that Deliveroo be fined the maximum €375,000 for undeclared labour. The group on Thursday added that its marketing and other investment costs, notably spending on technology, rocketed 75% to almost £629 million. Looking at 2022, founder and chief executive Will Shu cautioned over headwinds due to inflationary pressures, the removal of economic stimulus, and the broader geopolitical and economic impacts of the conflict in Ukraine. But he forecast the company would reach break even between the second half of 2023 and first half of 2024. Market watchers focus on Deliveroo's expected performance this year. Dan Thomas, senior analyst at Third Bridge, noted, in 2022, competition will remain very high in the traditional food and grocery delivery markets, and this makes it unlikely that ROO will be able to reduce its high marketing expenditure in the near term. Deliveroo has enjoyed strong sales growth in a short space of time, but faces questions over its sustainability, highlighted by its failed stock market debut, which took place in London a year ago. Its initial public offering was the capital's biggest stock market launch for a decade, valuing the group at £7.6 billion. But its share price tumbled at launch day by almost a third from the IPO price of £3.90 as investors questioned Deliveroo's treatment of its self-employed riders. Deliveroo's share price was up nearly 5% at £1.22 in early London trading following the earnings update. Susanna Streeter, senior investment and markets analyst at Hargreaves Lansdown, said Deliveroo is riding deeper into the red as it shifts gears to try to carry off a bigger slice of the takeaway market. At this time, it's making a huge effort to peddle its new markets, to try and widen its reach of riders across the UK, and that's encouraged investors. Back to you, Giancarlo.
Thank you, Ashley, for bringing us that story. Are you a user of these takeaway apps?
Yes, I am a user of the Deliveroo apps, so we'll be seeing how much it will be affecting me in terms of when I order.
Thank you so much, Ashley, for joining us this week.
Thank you so much, Giancarlo. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I'm Ashley Spiritu, and we live in interesting times.
In response to the increasing cost of electricity and gas, France gives aid to companies and consumers. Febeline Calpo has the details. Let's watch.
Due to the war in Ukraine, the French government on Wednesday announced an annuity worth 3 billion euros, $3.3 billion to help companies cope with the increasing cost of electricity and gas. The aid would benefit in particular the energy-intensive metal and chemical industries, as well as paper and food producers, Finance Minister Bruno Le Maire said in a press conference. Prime Minister Jean Castex also stated that firms whose energy costs account for at least 3% of revenue and are experiencing operating losses as a result of price increases will receive half of the additional coverage from the annuities. He also said, and I quote, "Our economy is working. It remains dynamic, and above all, it has to be that way." President Emmanuel Macron, who is aiming for re-election in April, had already announced on Saturday a €2 billion plan to reduce petrol and diesel prices for consumers by 15 cents a litre after prices soared to above €2 a litre, around $8.50 a gallon. To help low-income households cope with increasing energy prices across Europe, last autumn the government announced a cap on gas and electricity prices until the end of 2022 and also gave checks. And on Wednesday, the International Energy Agency warned that the world could face its biggest oil supply shock in decades as Russia, a major exporter, is hit by the sanctions over its invasion of Ukraine. From France Bureau, I am Febeline Calpo. For Eagle News International, we live in interesting times.
Thank you, Febeline, for the update from Marseille, France. We go to Spain now, where the Saharan dust storm reaches Madrid. Let's watch this report by Julianne Aala.
The skies and streets have turned orange and gray as the Saharan sandstorm reaches all over Madrid, Spain.
On the morning of Tuesday, 15th of March, people in the city of Madrid have found the streets, parks, and vehicles covered in grayish, semi-reddish, sandy dust. This is due to African air mass intrusion, bringing its sand to continental Europe. Weather forecasts say that the Saharan desert dust will circulate through until Wednesday. Because of the hazardous and unhealthy quality of the air, people were advised to stay indoors.
When achieving levels of air pollution harmful to health, the Madrid Air Quality Service recommends not exercising outdoors. Keep safe and healthy. Reporting from Madrid, Spain, I am Juliana Ala.
It's time for a break now, but please come back for some more ENI UK and Europe edition.
After over 2 years in the pandemic, Metro Manila and 38 other areas in the Philippines have been downgraded to Alert Level 1 since March 1. But even so, wearing a face mask is required. Although our faces are covered most of the time outdoors, people still have different concerns regarding their looks. So how can we improve the condition of our skin without breaking the bank? In this episode, we'll talk with a very young entrepreneur who wants her clients to achieve the skin they've long dreamt of. May Nang, founder of the Lemur Corporation, will discuss how her business offers a Filipino beauty brand with a French twist.
Giving up is not an option. When you are starting up, syempre, there's a lot of trials na papasok talaga. So, don't get intimidated. Parang isipin mo lagi yung goal mo, like, bakit mo ginawa to? God will always finish what He started.
All these in this episode of Open for Business.
Hindi lang sa pagdidribble at pag-shoot sila magaling, kundi pati na rin sa pagpindot at pagsagot ng ating trivia questions. Let's welcome our basketball players from Quezon City. Inilipat ng Espanya ang pagmamay-ari sa Pilipinas sa halagang $20 million at ibinigay sa Amerika. Saan ginanap ang kasunduang ito?
Bibigay ko kay Jerome.
Mukha ba hindi niya rin alam yan?
Alam mo na, hindi mo alam yan. Ba't mo alam? Ba't mo alam?
And this is the game! Agad! Agad!
Lolo na matagal nang hindi makapagtrabaho mula nang maoperahan sa baga, tumulog sa responde. Ina na batang may cerebral palsy, epilepsy at iba pang sakit, nagpasaklolo sa responde. Kailangan mo ba ay libreng legal assistance? Meron ka nang maaring takbuhan. Kung sino sila, narito ating pong kilalanin. At mga batang may cleft palate o bingot, mabibigyan na ng pag-asang mamuhay ng normal ng ating mga e-responders. Sabado, alas 6 hanggang alas 7 ng gabi. Ito ang Responde, Mata ng Mamamayan.
Welcome back to ENI UK and Europe edition. I'm Giancarlo Matera with more interesting stories from UK and Europe this week. In our sports news now. We have the latest in football from Keith Dimabuyu. Let's hear from him.
The Champions League round of 16 knockout stages now concluded as Chelsea put their off-field troubles to one side to seal a place in the Champions League quarter-finals on Wednesday as Cesar Azpilicueta goal clinched a 2-1 win at Lille in the second leg of their last 16 tie and a 4-1 aggregate victory. Reeling from the impact of the United Kingdom government sanctions imposed on their Russian billionaire owner Roman Abramovich, the London club appeared rattled as they fell behind in northern France to a first-half Burak Yilmaz penalty. Coach Thomas Tuchel had insisted there could be no excuses for his team, despite the Blues being left in turmoil after Abramovich's assets were frozen, with Chelsea only being allowed to continue operating by the British government under a special license. They have been banned from selling tickets and were told they could not spend more than £20,000 per match on travel costs, throwing their plans for this trip across the English Channel into some disarray. Before kickoff on Wednesday, it emerged that the Ricketts family, owner of Major League Baseball team the Chicago Cubs, were leading a consortium looking to buy the club, while British athletics great Sebastian Coe announced his involvement in a rival bid. Thomas Tuchel and his Chelsea side must now focus on the football aspect of the club, avoiding any of the outside distractions as they now progress to the Champions League quarter-finals. Reporting for Sport from the UK, I am Keith Mbuyu, and we live in interesting times. Jurgen Klopp warned his Liverpool stars that their momentum in the Premier League title race is a fragile flower following Wednesday's vital 2-0 win at Arsenal. Klopp's side closed the gap on leaders Manchester City to just 1 point thanks to goals from Diogo Jota and Roberto Firmino at the Emirates Stadium. Liverpool's 9th consecutive league victory puts the destiny of the title in their hands, as they would take the trophy if they win their 9 remaining games, including a crucial trip to City on the 10th of April. While City faltered in a goalless draw at Crystal Palace on Monday, Liverpool were at their relentless best as they survived Arsenal's first half barrage before snatching the 3 points. But although Liverpool are the league's in-form team, Reds boss Klopp is cautious about putting too much faith in their momentum. The seismic showdown with City could well determine if Liverpool can land a second English title in 3 seasons. Reporting for sports from the UK, for ENI, I am Keith Dimbuyu, and we live in interesting times.
Thank you for bringing us the sports update, Keith. In today's view from our window, we take a look at Lauterbrunnen in Switzerland. A unique landscape between gigantic rock faces can be found in the Bernese region of Switzerland, whose landmark is the Staubach Falls, a 297-meter-high waterfall that plunges from an overhanging rock and is one of the highest free-falling waterfalls in Europe. If you love nature, you will find an ideal place for hiking here. This video is courtesy of Irene Juliet Arzadon. Thank you so much for sharing this great view with us, Irene. And that's it for our program today. We hope you stay safe and keep positive as we bring you more stories next week from around the United Kingdom and Europe. I'm Giancarlo Matera. We live in interesting times.
In good shape. Do's and don'ts that will help you stay fit for the rest of your life.